Chapter 357. Baron Wilhelm, whose cruelty knew no bounds, had dismissed the reports about Keshir and the cavalry with the wave of his hand, as if there was no need to speak further on the matter. My head hurts. Let's leave it at that. How is the first Prince Pruel? Does he seem like he still has no intention of leaving? Yes. When I casually asked, he said that he needs to take some more time to return, so that His Grace the Duke's anger about him suddenly coming here will subside. I see. Indeed, it's fitting for a person of the same bloodline to know His Grace the Duke's temperament well. Baron Wilhelm, who replied indifferently, changed his complexion as if something had crossed his mind at the mention of the word Duke. By the way, how are the things with the children? I told them to meet with him daily and build a rapport if possible. I have been too preoccupied to ask if it's going well. Baron Wilhelm had been making efforts to have his daughters meet with Pruel whenever the opportunity arose. There were more instances of marriage within the Branch family than with the external nobles. If things went well, one of his daughters might become the next Duchess, and even if it didn't work out, at least the relationship with the main house could be strengthened. It was not a bad idea. The current Duke and his wife had no interest in children, so capturing the heart of the one to be married was enough, and this was one of the reasons he was eyeing Pruel. They have met a few times, I hear, but what? Baron Wilhelm, who had recently come to hate the word but more than anything else in the world, sharply asked. The servant who had been making the report reflexively hunched his shoulders and cautiously continued. The first prince has been too preoccupied with taking care of the cat he bought this time to invite the young ladies into his room. Moreover, since finding the cat, he has frequently dined with His Grace Duke Paleta, making it difficult for the young ladies to visit. What? A cat? Baron Wilhelm's eyebrows writhed uncontrollably. He vaguely recalled a report about Pruel losing a cat and the servants of the main house being distressed. That must have been an excuse, you stupid. Why do you not mention first that the two were meeting so frequently? My apologies, but your lordship has been rather busy lately for Tenu. I was overstepping my boundaries and worried that if I delivered even the trivial reports surrounding the first prince, it might cause strain on your body. Even if I'm busy, still. Though he did lose his temper, Baron Wilhelm felt a little better at the servant's words. At a time when the Duke of Tenu's insulting messages were pouring in several times a day, and there was no sign of suspicious movements in Tenu settling down, knowing that there was someone who understood his situation satisfied him. His hot-headed thoughts cooled down, and his usual shrewd mind began to whirl. No, come to think of it, it might not be entirely a bad thing. The Duke of Tane had been harassing Baron Wilhelm day and night with the task of secretly and securely moving the items hidden in Tenu and chasing suspicious movements. It was quite like him to refuse to come in person even if he was so troubled, instead only losing his temper. Because of this, he had not been able to focus on the investigation of Duke Paleta or the recruitment of the cavalry member who had achieved merit in the Great Serene Forest, as he had originally planned. If Pruel was taking over these roles, then it was rather a welcome matter. Besides, if it had been before, I wouldn't know, but now, the first prince, he clearly seems to have the intention of becoming the successor. Since he had started showing interest in family matters, his approach to Duke Paleta must surely be more than simple. Pruel had not been here long when he subtly asked Baron Wilhelm about the secret trade. The Baron was deeply surprised. He had thought that Pruel, who had been known for his lack of interest in family matters until now, had finally come to his senses and was laying the groundwork for his succession. Anyone who was not a stranger would know that the recent Great Serene Forest incident in their sphere of influence, so it appeared that Pruel was striving to grasp information about it himself. Baron Wilhelm stroked his chin. unable to imagine that his speculation was completely wrong from the beginning to end. You have found a way, even though I was too busy to properly care for you. Truly wise of you. I must inquire whether you can meet him and assist in the matter of Duke Paleta's new sword and that impudent cavalry member's persuasion. Indeed, my lord, you read all the plays even while sitting down. You rascal, your tongue is indeed smooth. Baron Wilhelm laughed heartily for the first time in a while. Then he began to check on the real matters he had been putting off due to a headache. Is there still no contact from the commander of the Tenno Knights? Yes, those injured in the explosion still haven't come to their senses, so they don't even know the appearance of the culprit. Laziness and pathetic. How are they sleeping at night? Is it over if they can't touch him just because they don't know what he looks like? They should use some other means. They are just repeating the same interrogations without thinking of finding a new method. Baron Wilhelm rubbed his forehead, not holding back his insults towards the commander of Tenno's Knights, Jaimir Phil. I suppose it's because they don't know what was stolen from the Red Deer Consortium. I don't think those lowly people could read what was inside, but the fact that it was stolen leaves me with no excuse to Duke Tane. Baron Wilhelm recalled the dizziness he felt when he found out that the safe he had been secretly keeping in the Red Deer Consortium was ransacked by intruders. He didn't tell the commander of the Knights or others, but inside were documents containing records of the new trade business that Duke Tane had been pushing, including the ledger of goods going back and forth during the operation. To the ordinary eye, it would seem like a standard ledger, filled with all sorts of complicated numbers and nouns designated by code. But if one knew the content, the story was completely different. Even reading it properly would allow them to trace the flows of goods from the west through the Great Serene Forest to Tenno. Those scoundrels are definitely targeting Duke Tane's trading business, so the next target must be the intermediate base. They must have infiltrated the Red Deer Consortium and the security management team to find it. Why on earth those lowly people are making such a fuss over this, I cannot even guess. At the housekeeper's words, Baron Wilhelm snorted and replied, What would those lowly people be thinking? You must look at the shadow behind them. Shadow, you say? Those who are displeased with Duke Tane's business, it could be movement within the family, or perhaps something else. It's not for me to know, but the answer is obvious, isn't it? Ah, I see. They must be hiring awakeners to bother us, no doubt about it. With their protection, that's why so many of them can hide like rats inside Tenno. What will you do next, my lord? Duke Tane said yesterday that he can no longer wait. Keeping the goods in Tenno any longer is too risky. So, from today on, rather than just focusing on catching those guys, we must find time to think about ways to move the goods. In the meantime, Baron Wilhelm doubled his patrols and conducted surprise inspections in order to find a group of awakeners who had killed Tenno Knights in the Great Serene Forest and dared to come here and cause the explosion. However, the culprits had vanished without a trace. Days were wasted with no results, and the frustration had reached a point where merely reading Duke Tane's curses made Wilhelm's head ache. He could no longer solely focus on this matter. I must call that lazy knight commander and order him to search even the places that have not been searched yet. Check everywhere, including already verified inns, mercenary groups, and the places recently visited by strangers. If anything is suspicious, even if it's from here, arrest them all. Though it was a harsh measure that would further tighten the already tense atmosphere in Tenno, there was no other choice. What can I do? At least this way, I can have a chance to breathe. Dealing with Duke Tane, who seemed to have no consideration for other situations, was no easy task. If Wilhelm failed to produce results, he might face an assassin sent by Duke tomorrow. So he had to do this to appease the Duke's fury. My lord, just now, Commander Phil has sent news. At that moment, A servant urgently knocked on the door and raised his voice. That stupid fool must have finally woken up and written a report. Let him in. However, the news from Commander Jammerfil was not a simple report. I apologize, but just now, several warehouses of the Red Deer Consortium were completely destroyed. What? Baron Wilhelm froze momentarily. The assessment of casualties and property damage is ongoing, and coincidentally, advisor Graham Wilhelm was also severely injured. Graham? Baron Wilhelm opened and closed his mouth several times before finally raising his feet, his face pale. Lead the way. I must see it myself. Hurry. There seem to be few servants wandering about today. Don't you think, Assistant? Yes. Yudhi stretched out in the reception room, calmly replied as he sat next to Kishir, who was looking out the window with the door open. It was fun playing games under their watchful eyes, but it's not so motivating without an audience. Had Baron Wilhelm's servants heard this, they would have wept. But Kishir was merely jesting.